Hello, I'm using the OBSBOT Tiny 4K web camera, and it is a very special web camera which I'll demonstrate right now. This web camera has tracking. It is set on a gimbal with horizontal and vertical tracking, so it tracks me left and right and also up and down. Also testing the microphones right now, guys. I'm around 9 feet away from the web camera, so you can hear the clarity, the pickup of the audio. Not the best audio environment, of course, because of the hard surfaces of my room here, but it's a test nonetheless. And if we're getting closer, maybe that sounds a little bit better to you. Just another test of the tracking, and maybe I'll sit in my sim rig over here and see what happens. Yeah, hello, it's picking me up, no problems. Another special feature of this web camera, which I want to show you, is it does have digital zoom. A lot of web cameras have that, but does it do this? It supports hand gestures. So yes, I can zoom up to 4 times. This is currently around 1.9 zoom, and I can zoom back out just using the same hand gesture. There we go. And if I want to fix the frame, if say I want to be in a particular position, I don't want the camera to follow me, I can then hold it like that, and I can still zoom in, I can still zoom out, and I can also then resume the tracking like so. And you just see the speed of the tracking and the smoothness as it tracks me around the room. And then finally, I sit back down, and there you go. It comes in this hard shell case, a little handle on the top, so that will protect your investment. And inside, cables, and obviously the webcam. That's the monitor stand. Let's take this all out. So it is USB Type-C on this side, so that plugs into the back here. And on this side it's actually USB Type-C as well, but it does come with this adapter, and I was running it with the adapter and it's absolutely fine. So yeah, so you want to run it over USB 3 basically, or USB Type-C. You can run it over USB 2, but in that case you'll need to use this second cable plugged in also at the same time, as it is a little power cable that goes into the top there, into the DC in. So you basically end up having to run both the cables, so for power and also for data there. But it's unlikely you really want to run this over USB 2, as USB 2 doesn't have the bandwidth to really cope with 4K or 1080p 60 frames per second. So do bear that in mind. Who's going to be running a premium webcam over USB 2? Doesn't make sense to me anyway, but it's nice that it has this legacy function just as a fallback, but you're likely, in fact, you really want to use it over USB 3 or Type-C. That's the way to do this, run this camera. This is the little monitor stand. It's got a magnet on there, and it just sits on there. You can see it's good, it's all very stable, nice and strong, and it will sit on your monitor, something that direction, like that, like so. A little adhesive pad on here if you want to use it, so that adds a little bit more security as well to keep the stand on top of your monitor. But I didn't use it, I didn't need to. But for the entirety of my demonstrations, I did have this on top of my monitor. Let's get out of the way so it doesn't interfere with the frame of this. You can see it's quite small, it's not too big. Smaller than my hand, maybe smaller than you might expected. And you can see the gimbal, nice and smooth. Let's take that off there. Also, actually, if you look at the bottom, there is a rubber ring, so you can put it on the table and it just has good friction on there. And also a threaded hole, which is like a standard tripod thread. So I can demonstrate that with my little tripod here. So you do have these multiple ways to basically mount this webcam, which is very good, and it will be something like that. You can just see the bring it in there. We can see the rotation. So that's clearly the front of it. So it doesn't rotate 365 degrees. I'll show you the motion of what you get. So it's there. There's a hard stop there, and then a hard stop there. But you do get quite a big range. So it does go behind, and it goes all the way up, all the way down. So that's the motion you get, guys, from this camera. It will track all the way through that arc. So it is the camera. The things I can remember, I can tell you, is the field of view for the camera. If you obviously if we discount the fact the field of view is pretty much all the way around, it is a 78-degree field of view camera. And as I said, it's 30 frames per second at 4K and 1080p. It can do 60 frames per second. On the front here, you can see this little window here. That's for LEDs, so it'll let you know when the camera's running, if there's any errors, anything like that. There's basically different coloured LED lights that flash on here. In the documentation, it tells you what they all mean. So if you make a gesture, it will also flash, let you know it has picked up the gesture. So that's useful to know as well. So another close look at the camera all the way around. Okay, let's move on and we will check out the settings. Okay, let's take a look at the software next. Something that's worth knowing is you can have 4 of these cameras connected up to your PC at once, and each additional camera would be labelled as another one of these icons. So I only have 1 camera, so that's 1. But if I had 2 or 3 more, then they'd be labelled as 2, 3 and 4, and then I can then click between them to manually change the settings. What I can do here as well is if I want to lock the tracking out, I can then tap on that and then resume. Simple enough. Next we can zoom in. Again, pretty obvious stuff there, guys. I can put the device to sleep here, which I won't do as it will basically cut the feed to the camera. But this is a nice thing. You can actually control the gimbal manually. So we can look around the room. Just going to show you this because it doesn't track all the way around. You don't have 365 degrees motion, so you can't go all the way around and spin perpetually, unfortunately. But you do get quite far in behind, so I'm sure this should be enough for most people's uses. And then just click reset to then come back and hopefully, there you go, tracking me again. To initiate the privacy mode, all you need to do is rotate the camera downwards and it will cut the audio and picture like so. Flick it back up and it will then spring back into life. The green light on the web camera below the camera will also go out when privacy mode has been initiated. There's some additional controls, so I'll just bring up this panel and drag it into frame here. So at the top, software version, firmware version, pretty obvious stuff. Then we have gesture control, locked target, and control zoom. So if you want to basically turn off the gesture controls, you simply do that here. We have the zoom factor there, which I had set to 1.9 as I demonstrated earlier. So we can of course adjust that. If you want the gesture zoom to zoom into a different factor, then you obviously change that here. So I'll leave it on 1.9. Next we have head tracking mode, and this is a really interesting one because it will basically change the framing of where your head is in the picture here. So headroom mode is the one which is ideal for when you're having a close-up, when you're using it as a webcam, traditional webcam. If you want something slightly more universal, then you go to standard mode, and that will sort of, it should, well, if I can get it to do it, it's hard to do it because it's quite close up, but normally what would happen is the top of my head would be slightly closer to the top of the frame. More useful when you're slightly further out, and what's there is trying to get more of your body into the frame. And motion mode What that'll do, we'll see if that does anything. Yeah, you can see that. So what that's trying to do is get my top of my head as close to the top of the picture frame as possible. So if you're maybe standing far back and you want your whole body to be shown in frame, then you use that. It also tracks quicker as well. So if you're doing something very active, moving around quickly, then you want to use motion mode. But for me, we want headroom mode, as we are quite close up, and you can see it does reframe me, tries to put my face in the center of the picture. Next we have configure mode, which is simply bringing up the standard Windows properties window. So you're probably used to all that. Next we have anti-flicker. So if you have problems with lighting or maybe a monitor in the background which is causing flicker on the camera, then you can initiate anti-flicker mode, 50 Hz or 60 Hz. You can test either one, but usually that's for 50 Hz is like UK or maybe Europe, and 60 Hz is for America. So there you go. Next we have HDR. That's an advanced feature, and that will just improve the contrast of the scene or rounds, and hopefully it makes things look much more, the shadows and the high brightness of the scene should level out and look a little bit better to you. So that's the idea of that. We have autofocus. Obviously that's on at the moment. You can turn it off. I found autofocus is working really well. I'm not finding it's losing, it's going out of focus. I'm not having any blurring, so I'm pretty happy with its autofocus feature. And face focus will mean it will try to lock onto your face and primarily have that focus on there. Preset position, you can have up to 3 of these. And say if you're not using the AI tracking and you want the camera to maybe move to certain positions in a room, so I might want to film over here, and film over there. So I can set 3 different positions, then you use the gimbal control to add that preset, and then you can use hotkeys, so you can then point the camera over here, here and there, and it'll just basically, zoom to those positions for you. So that's interesting. I'm not using any of that, but it's obviously quite simple stuff. Initial boot position, so when you turn the camera on, you can have it to basically point in a particular direction of your choosing. Obvious stuff really, guys. Remote controller, so there is an optional remote controller which you can buy. If you click on the question mark, you can then go to the product page and buy it from there. It's not very expensive. If you find that's going to be a useful thing for you, then get that. And of course you can turn it off and on here. Language, different languages of course, and under more, export a log, upgrade manual. Basically you can download the latest PDF manual online. Firmware upgrade, of course, upgrade the firmware on the camera if there is one available, and restore factory settings. And that's your lot. That's all the settings. Okay, let's test the lighting conditions, how well the camera handles low light conditions. So at the moment it is optimal, although it is evening, so there's no ambient light coming from the window, which is on the wall behind my PC there. But I can tell you what I do have. I have lights in the ceiling, not particularly powerful lights, they are just LED lights, 4 of those. I have quite a powerful video lights here, so photography video type of lights panel, which is that stand is there and it's shining into the room on that side. I also have a little LED panel on my PC pointing towards me. So let's turn off the lighting, which most people won't have to begin with, will be this panel here, this big one there. So that is now just using ceiling lights and my little LED panel behind my monitor. Let's see how it looks from afar. And still tracking just fine. Just see the detail of my face close up. Next we'll turn off this panel, which I will show you what I'm using here. It's just this LED panel here. It's pretty bright in my face, but you can just see this is the little fella. Very handy to have. So let me turn that off and just see how it adjusts to the lighting. And now we have just my ceiling lights on and the lights from the monitor here. So let me come back out and just see how that handles this. I think I might have used yeah, I put my hand up and I froze the position of the camera. But here we go. Just a quick test to see if it also zooms in. Yeah, it's still working, and it's fairly dimly lit. So the lights I have are not particularly bright, they are sort of low voltage. I think I froze it again. Yes, I have. You do have to be careful with your hand gestures. So if it gets that, there you go. And just come in again. But again, you can see my facial features to see if it's picking up detail. And finally, let's turn off the ceiling lights and see how it handles just the light coming from the PC. So my desktop is fairly blue, so it does have quite a blue tinge to it. And again, it's a close up. Let's go back in the room as well. Yeah, it's okay. It's obviously lost the tracking now. It doesn't have enough lights to do that, but close up, I think it should pick me up again and be fine. So this is pretty much the suboptimal lighting with no lights on other than lights on the monitor. If I turn the monitor off, I'm assuming it'll be absolutely nothing, but let's try this. Okay, so I don't know if it can see anything, but let's turn the monitor back on. And there you go. But I'll turn the ceiling lights on, which would be typically what you might get away with. But I think ideally you might want to have some sort of light, shining from the back of the camera. Something like this, a very small LED panel, might be quite sufficient for this job. So let's put this back on just so you can see that. And yeah, that's pretty good. Looks pretty good to me. I can't tell from the small preview whether or not there's any graining from the on the picture through the sort of lower light conditions, but I'm sure I'll be able to tell when I run it back and look at the video recordings. But I'm sure you can see as well whether or not there is any issues there. But so far so good. I think it's working pretty well. Okay guys, let's wrap up this review with some final words. Well, hopefully the demonstrations I've showed you have given you a good idea whether or not this is going to be a product suitable for you. Of course, the main selling point is the tracking, the fact it can track you around the room, and it does that amazingly without missing a beat. I thought that was incredible, and I still find it to be an incredible, a strange kind of novelty, the fact it can do this. It does it so well. It keeps me centered in the room. And and it does it so nice and smoothly and quickly. It's fantastic, and of course that's the biggest selling point, and it has to be its best feature, and it is. It does that fantastically. Never failed. I thought that was impressive. The quality of the camera, well, bear in mind it is just a web camera, guys, and I think as a web camera it does a good job. 1080p, 60 frames per second. Nothing to be sniffed at. That's very good. Of course, if you want, really high quality recordings, then you still have to go for something like a mirrorless camera, a DLSR. There's no way around it. There's no web camera that's going to give you film quality, filming. But this does fare very well against my Logitech Brio, which again is a 4K camera, 30 frames per second, and also 60 frames per second at 1080p. I think it, does a very good similar job to that. Though I'd say this web camera does a better job in low light conditions, where on the Brio there's a lot of graininess when the lighting isn't good. This one did a very good job, and only until we only had the monitor lights going on and no other lights in the room did we have any graining. And even then, you can still see me. It wasn't obviously a great picture, but it still tracks me, which I thought was quite amazing. So yeah, I have to say it does a very good job as a web camera as well. Really no complaints about that. I think it does it's decent. Definitely the colours look good as well. The exposure looks good in the room. Nothing overexposed. I think everything looks pretty decent. And the colours look accurately reproduced. Again, sometimes you don't always get that with web cameras, but yeah, it does look exactly how it should do. One thing actually which my other web cameras don't do very well which I will show you. I didn't plan to do this, but it sometimes has problems with oranges and they come out quite red. So this is a orange glove, and I noticed on my other videos when I'm filming in the sim rig, the gloves look quite red and not very orange, but this looks orange. So yeah, it does a really good job at reproducing the natural colours correctly. Default settings, didn't do any changes there. Autofocus and everything else, just using the settings which it gave me, and yeah, I'm really happy with that. It is plug and play, install the software, and just away you go. It really is nice and easy, no friction setting it up, and in use, very little setup process required. Yeah, excellent, really. So yeah, low friction involved in making sure everything works well on this camera. Yeah, so really happy about its performance, and that's really what I got have to say. That's as much as I have to say. It does the job and it does it really well, and all I've shown you is demonstrations of the camera and obviously the microphone as well by using the mic on the web camera, so you get a good idea of that as well. And that's it, guys. I mean, I think it's great. What do you think? Drop comments below the video. If you own this web camera, then indeed also drop your feedback as well, and if you have any questions, do fire away. I'm happy to pick those up and tell you something, answer anything I haven't answered in this video. But yeah, I think I'll end it now. Let's wrap it up. And thank you very much for watching, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.